The wrong video, dude. I'm so stupid. Here, we're gonna run that back. I apologize. I'm so dumb. I was like, why are they playing these other... Why is he playing these other fucking B-roll?
And I was looked today at when it cost $763. Would that pill be the same?
I understand your question about the pill. The pill, the manufacturing for it would be the same.
Great, thank you. I want to turn to one other number if you would help me. Do you know what this number is? Does it ring any bells?
But I think you're referring to my compensation in some way.
Yeah, well, in some way. This was your compensation in 2017 for being CEO of Celgene, and that's a lot of money. Any increase in the price of Revlimid would also increase your bonus by increasing earnings. Isn't that right, Mr. Ellis?
If revenues increased and expenses did not, then earnings would be enhanced. And
thank you. In fact, you personally received $500,000 personally just by tripling the price of Revlimid. So to recap here, the drug didn't get any better. The cancer patients didn't get any better. You just got better at making money. You just refined your skills at price gouging.
What you just saw was Representative Katie Porter grilling Mark Alice, the former CEO of pharma company Celgene, over massive price hikes on their cancer drug Revlimid. The executive admitted that, despite the huge added cost to patients, the drug was fundamentally unchanged. It didn't work better or faster, there had been no improvements to effectiveness, it was exactly the same product. And yet the price for a single pill had jumped from $215, already very expensive, to $763. Where did this extra money go? Straight into executive pockets. Alice, who was already paid $13 million per year, netted an extra $500,000 simply for raising the price of a single drug. This particular exchange went viral back in 2020, but the despicable practice of medical price gouging is far more widespread than this single example. In fact, it's standard American operating procedure. Before
sorry, second thought. Have you thought about why we do this, sir? Excuse me. If it wasn't for the American working class literally fucking getting gouged out the asshole for the 10x pharmaceutical price that we pay for on average, how else could these big pharma executives fund their private jets, sir? Okay? It's necessary for innovation, and it's necessary because we're subsidizing the rest of the planet. No, the fuck we're not, by the way. Just the counter to that is always, we're subsidizing the rest of the planet, okay? And how you know, Pfizer and whatnot can fucking pay for such bottom of the barrel prices on the other countries, which is bullshit. And that the other counter is that it's good for innovation, which is also bullshit. R&D is very expensive. Yeah. Which is precisely why it is impossible to do. It is impossible to do with publicly funded research. Oh, wait, that's not true. It literally gets done with publicly funded research all the time. Oh, but the novel chemical compounds actually are found significantly more in privately funded research. Bullshit.
Before we get into the specifics, let's look at a few basic facts about the American healthcare industry as a whole. The US spends more money per capita on healthcare than any other nation on Earth. You would assume that this expenditure would guarantee the best care in the world. That is not the case. Despite being the most expensive healthcare system on Earth, consuming over 16% of our GDP, it's one of, if not the least effective in the developed world. We spend over $10,000 per capita on healthcare. And not only is the quality of care subpar, we don't even come close to covering everybody. Compare this.
Why do you talk about shit you know nothing about? What you learned from YouTube, LMFAO? Ooh, this is going to be a good one. Wants kids? Trump. Why is it always Trump supporters? The cabal, yo, there's so much information on there you're not even looking at. How much did the Russia impeachment cost? Yikes, cringer. How do we pay for the R&D to... Oh, God. How do we pay for the R&D it took to get the pill into production? I don't know. Have you heard of a concept called your fucking tax dollars literally funding publicly funded research that then is sold off in the form of patents, or sold off to other pharmaceutical corporations to find new methods of delivery? Love that, dude. Love that for you. Maybe one day you will no longer be stupid. Hopefully today is that day. You have the opportunity.
To places like Germany, who pay drastically less per capita and guarantee coverage to all citizens. There were over 27 million uninsured Americans in 2018, and that number will have skyrocketed in the last year thanks to millions of COVID layoffs across the country. Even before the pandemic, we had more uninsured and underinsured citizens than any other developed nation. In addition to not covering a large portion of the population, even those with excellent health insurance, by American standards that is, struggle to pay medical bills. Over 25% of insured people reported having difficulty paying for the exorbitant cost of their treatment. Of this group, 63% had to pay most or all of their savings to cover the medical bills, and 42% had to find a second job. Life-saving drugs in America often cost 10 times what they cost in other countries. For example, in Canada, one vial of insulin costs $32. In the United States, the same drug from the same factory...
That's not exactly true. It's true publicly funded research is utilized by big pharma to produce drugs, but it isn't patents just being stolen from tax dollar funded research law. No, I never said that it's stolen from tax dollar funded research. And also, a lot of these pharmaceutical corporations absolutely pump money back into those publicly funded research institutions as well, so they can get fucking first right of refusal on a lot of these new game-changing patents and shit. I never said it's stolen. They still pay for it. The theft is from your pockets. Your tax dollars pay for that publicly funded research, and then you have to fucking buy it back in the most massive fucking upmarked bullshit cost. Especially when comparing those same prices to the rest of the fucking world.
Costs $300. And that's not even an extreme example.
Sorry.
Take the same one vial of insulin costs $32. In the United States, the same drug from the same factory costs $300. And that's not even an extreme example. Take the HIV drug Truvada. In Australia, it costs just $8. In the US, it costs $2,000, despite US taxpayers footing the bill for its development. Every year, over 500,000 people go bankrupt trying to pay their medical bills. In a country where 40% of the population can't afford a surprise $400 expense, an ambulance ride to the hospital will cost you more than twice that amount. And all of this is happening in the richest country on Earth. This all sounds pretty bad, right? It is. Of all the things Americans choose to defend, our sadistic healthcare industry should not be one of them. It's inhumane, ineffective, and deeply corrupt. If you're wondering why our system is so awful, just follow the money. The healthcare industry spends more money on lobbying than the oil and defense industries combined. And those are both massive lobbies. Lobbying, of course, is just a euphemism for bribery. Lobbyists make generous donations to politicians, those politicians pocket the money and write legislation that favors the donor's industry. They both make money, and average Americans are worse off than they were before. This cycle continues indefinitely, and features a ludicrous revolving door wherein politicians often go on to become lobbyists themselves. It's a twisted charade and bears no semblance to actual democracy. But why are pharmaceuticals so lucrative? There are several reasons. One of them the fact that the relationship between manufacturers, insurance companies, hospitals, and middlemen is so convoluted that it's incredibly difficult to nail down when any one of them is price gouging. But beyond that, it's just simple math. Nearly half of all Americans take prescription drugs. That's almost 165 million people, and it represents a massive market for pharmaceuticals. It's especially lucrative because many people require these drugs just to stay alive, so they'll pay whatever they have to.
And therein lies the fundamental problem that literally every fucking capitalist Econ 101 Andy lies to you about in regards to supply and demand. Because every Econ 101 class talks about inelastic demand. Okay? It is something that you learn in like the third fucking class of macroeconomic principles. Okay? It's a lie to avoid the reality that with the field of medicine, with pharmaceuticals, with healthcare in general, there is inelastic demand. Literally something you learn in like your third fucking class. And yet, for some weird reason, no one ever comprehends this reality, or no one wants to admit this reality. Can you explain that concept? He just did. You die if you don't get insulin. If you're diabetic and you don't get insulin, you die, which means you need it to survive, which means the pharmaceutical corporation can charge you $600 if they want to. And if you can't pay for it, you fucking die. So you're going to have to pay for that $600. If they want to, they can charge you $10. If they want to, they can charge you $600. There is no fucking supply and demand there. That's what the textbooks teach as well. Yes, but for some fucking weird reason, no one ever adds that next puzzle piece, I guess. Okay? No one ever adds that next fucking puzzle piece that dictates that this needs to be solved through socialization. Okay? For some weird fucking reason, I don't know why, people refuse to comprehend this basic principle that they learn.
Let's take perhaps the most common example, insulin. There are roughly 23 million diabetics in the US, and if we expand that category to people who are pre-diabetic, the number shoots up to 100 million people, nearly a third of the total US population. When someone has diabetes, they rely on insulin. It's not optional. The average diabetic needs somewhere around 2 to 3 vials of insulin per month, though some people require much more, in the range of 4 to 6 vials. Given the price of insulin in this country, the monthly cost is just too much for many people to afford.
Alright, so
For the record, I'm not even saying that like econ textbooks are not full of ideological garbage. I'm saying that even within the econ textbooks, even within those ideological confines, it literally doesn't make fucking sense. And yet people still avoid the second part of that equation.
I got a serious question for everybody out there. I generally want to know this, okay? How is everybody making it? How? I'm like, I've worked for like 17 years. I work all the time. I've been paying medical bills on my son for 9 years since he was born. And he was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and has to have insulin every 2 hours. I just got his prescription. It was $1,000. I couldn't pay for it. I now have to go in and tell my 9-year-old son I couldn't pay for it. I work a full-time job. My husband works a full-time job. I work third shift. I go to school during the day.
Why do you think this is a decent counter? He's using stats on all diabetics to describe a problem exclusive to people with type 1 diabetics. Who cares, dumbass? Inelastic demand still fucking exists for every part of the fucking pharmaceutical industry. You get that, right? Because nearly every drug is fucking life-saving, or at least managing pain, allowing you to live normally. Like, is your counter literally just don't take the medicine? Because unless your counter is literally just don't take the fucking medication, you cannot fucking make a statement like that.
How are you guys making it? Am I the only one struggling? How are you guys doing it?
But surely there's a good reason insulin is so expensive, right? Well, let's take a look at the drug's history. All the way back in 1922, researchers from the University of Toronto announced the discovery of insulin. Two of the researchers, Dr. Frederick Banting and Dr. J.J.R. MacLeod, received the Nobel Prize for their work. Since these two men held the patent for insulin, they stood to make an enormous sum of money by monopolizing its production. Instead, realizing the life-saving potential of the drug, Banting and MacLeod sold the patent to the university for $1 each. To the people who say there would be no innovation without financial incentive, here's a prime bit of evidence to the contrary. There are few things more lucrative than medical patents, and yet these men sold the rights for next to nothing. Why? Because they actually cared about other human beings, and not everyone is so
I'm glad that what we did with that was worthwhile here in the United States.
Perverted by the profit motive. After the patent was handed off to the University of Toronto, the institution made a grave mistake. They licensed the manufacturing of the drug to Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk. When the US gets its hands on something, it immediately ceases to be a force for good, and becomes nothing more than a way to generate ever greater profits. And that's exactly what happened with insulin.
Also, it's top of the hour every hour, so I'm going to run an ad right here. And if you'd like to avoid the ads and enjoy an ad-free broadcasting experience, all you need to do is subscribe. That's what happens when you go corpo, baby. You can subscribe for free with your Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. It gives you one free subscription a month. Here's the fucking ad. There it is, baby. There it is, baby. Title says Stonks the Big Short Day of Reckoning. Wait, is that what that says? Fuck, I gotta change my title. Holy shit. React Warlord Friday. I ran the ad. Most people don't even fucking get the ads. Like, I ran it.
The two pharma companies patented their products, essentially creating a monopoly over the life-saving drug. Eventually, a third company, Sanofi, got in on the action. And today, these three companies account for 90% of the insulin market. You may be thinking, okay, cool, so there's at least some competition. Well, not really. Here are some graphs plotting the price history of drugs from these companies. Notice anything? The prices for their respective drugs have increased at exactly the same rate. Not at similar rates, at exactly the same rate. That's not competition. That's collusion. The insulin giants are working together.
No, you don't understand. It's called price leadership, my friend, which is very different than price fixing. If you do it behind a smoke-filled room, behind closed doors in a dark, shadowy environment, that's called price fixing. If you do it and then the other company immediately follows through on it because they realize, like, yeah, of course, we can make more money, we can squeeze more profit out of these motherfuckers, then that's called price leadership, okay? Which is not illegal, and it's just, as someone in the chat also pointed out, jolly cooperation, okay? That's what that is. I see no issue with this, sirs and madams. There is no collusion, you see. When it's called leadership, there is no collusion. I mean, the free market, if they wanted to, they could lower the price and be more competitive. But they somehow refuse to do so. Very strange. Well, after all, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders to maximize their profit.
To ensure that they all make as much money as possible. Well, that's horrible, but surely someone could just make a generic version of insulin, right? That would force the big three to lower their prices. In theory, sure, but here's the thing about patents. If you hold a patent for a particular drug, no one else can produce that drug for a certain period of time. When that time is nearly up, you can simply make a small change to the formula, refile the patent, and boom, you've just secured your monopoly for another 20 years. That's exactly what the big insulin producers have been doing. And here's the absurd part. You don't even need to improve the product. You just need to change it, and you need to be able to prove that it's not objectively worse. Patent law is completely broken, and that's part of what has allowed the insulin giants to maintain their stranglehold and keep inflating their prices while Americans are literally dying over the lack of a drug that was intended to be made available for even the poorest people around the world. It should come as no surprise that between 2005 and 2015, 78% of drug patents were not for new drugs, but for slightly modified versions of
where the R&D cost goes to finding new ways of delivery. Now that is called innovation, my friends. When I look at the same exact drug and figure out a new form of delivering that drug, I can repatent it for another 7 years before generics can come into play. And that is the market working as intended, my friend. R&D prices, baby.
Of existing ones in order to extend their patents. This practice, paired with the fact that the FDA does not regulate drug prices, has made the US a wonderland for exploitative corporations and predatory institutions. The
solution to inelastic demand is not socializing. Government intervention makes everything worse and more expensive. When they stepped in to offer cheap loans for college education, all we did was cause the cost to skyrocket. Oh, I want to fucking die. It's so stupid, dude. This is the most brain-dead fucking take. Hey, inappropriate. Do you know that other countries exist on the planet? Are you aware? You know, other countries exist, right? Like, literally, look north, you stupid motherfucker. Just walk north. Like, walk until you hit the water. And then jump in the water in a video game. And then swim across if there is water. And you will arrive in this magical, mystical land called Canada. It's so strange, I know. It's so strange to think about this magical, mystical land where socialized medicine would ever alleviate people's problems. Yeah. It's fucking nuts, dude. They do it. They literally do it. Nah, dude. That fucking doesn't happen, dude. That literally doesn't happen. You're lying. I only can think about America and more America.
Manufacturer can charge $1,000 a month for insulin. A hospital can charge $100 for a single IV bag that's worth maybe $1. Private insurance companies can make it nearly impossible to find in-network doctors, forcing you to pay absurd out-of-network rates. They can set insanely high deductibles, which will guarantee a healthy profit for the insurance company while threatening even financially stable Americans with bankruptcy. And of course, this insurance is tied to your employment. So if you get laid off because, I don't know, a global pandemic that we completely refuse to address, you'll be paying out of pocket for everything. This system is not built with the well-being of American citizens in mind. Its sole purpose is to monetize the suffering of hundreds of millions of people. When the profit motive is the driving factor, nothing else matters. Everything is beholden to the dollar. This is why insulin is 10 times more expensive in the US than anywhere else. This is why scumbags like Martin Shkreli can raise the price of a drug by 5,000% overnight. It's why so many Americans go bankrupt trying to pay medical bills. It's why we die of preventable causes. It's why our sick refuse to get treatment, because they know they can't afford it. As long as the pharmaceutical industry is allowed to operate without oversight, they will continue to raise prices until there's not a single American who can afford their drugs. Unlike the men who discovered insulin, the ones who peddle it today don't care about their fellow human beings. All they care about is making money. We need to take a look around, realize that our healthcare system is the worst of any developed nation, and demand that those in power drag our country into the 21st century. There is no reason for this amount of suffering in the richest nation on Earth. If you'd like to learn more about what a modern, egalitarian healthcare system could look like, I highly recommend you check out Medicine of the Future on CuriosityStream. It's a great documentary about how advancements in medicine could extend the healthy lives of all people. CuriosityStream is an established streaming platform with a solid track record of caring about great educational content and the financial security.
Last time I went to the hospital, it was freezing. A nurse offered me a warm blanket and said, and I thought it was nice and accepted it. Then I saw what I was charged for that shit. Fucking hell, what's going on here? I wonder how much they charge you for it. The funniest part is, like, our fucking Canadian friends up north are literally constantly fighting new battles against socialization, like in areas that are private, for example, or not covered, like dental insurance is like a part of the political conversation there. Whatever you don't socialize, you end up having to fight for. Part of the reason why hospital prices are sky high is also because of our middlemen, our very powerful middlemen, insurers.
We're going to continue.
Who have no interest in like actually driving down cost and can very clearly put that cost back onto the consumers while also tacking on an additional chunk onto the bill by simply existing, which is great.